Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Portsmouth This Week. We have a special guest today to talk about a organization that, well, touches all of us here on Aquidneck Island. It's the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission, AIPC, and the program manager of that organization is one Allison McNally, and here she is. Thanks a lot for coming on the program. For the benefit of those who include myself, when I see in the paper the AIPC is moving, I wonder what that group does, and so you tell us what it is.
Sure.
And what it does.
First off, Bob, thanks for having me on the show today. The Aquidneck Island Planning Commission was founded in 1985, and our mission is to serve regional interests across Aquidneck Island. So we represent and assist the 3 municipalities as well as Naval Station Newport. And we are a nonprofit organization. We have a board of directors that are made up of 4 residents of each municipality on the town. We have a single representative of Naval Station Newport, and then we also have municipal council liaisons.
It's quite a comprehensive thing. Collaboration and cooperation and so forth is such a needed facet of an operation, especially on an island. On the other hand, so that everybody has a piece of it is pretty complicated, and your life must be filled with meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
We convene a lot of meetings. That's definitely.
How did you? What's your background to get involved with this kind of planning?
Well, I'm not a planner.
You're not a planner?
I am not a planner, believe it or not. So my background is actually in project management, project and program management of large technology initiatives. So I started volunteering. The city of Newport had a information technology working group to address the lack of internet services.
Yes.
On Aquidneck Island.
I remember that.
So I volunteered with that initiative while I was still actively working a variety of technology contracts. And then there was an opening at AIPC. Prior to that, I had worked with the then executive director of AIPC and the staff to submit a proposal to the state for funding of an as-is broadband study report on the island. And then
well, it sounds like even though you weren't in the planning facet, your background is such that you worked in so many fields that touch the AIPC.
I am a bit of an infrastructure geek, so I spent quite a number of years working in the telecommunications industry and writing software for a lot of global network initiatives.
Oh, wow.
So you encounter a lot of things like telephone poles and permits and ordinances.
A world I know
of
nothing about, Allison.
Yeah,
but it's out there and it's thriving, and I'm not, in STEAM, I noticed you have some STEAM booster thing, and the telecommunications, there's talk, I think before we went on the air, we talked about the telecommunications and connecting communities with broadband and so forth. My background was education, and at last the State Department of Education has linked all the communities up in some kind of a network, so you don't have to produce 69,000 pages for a report. You just zip it up there, and all the data's there, and that's great. The program being Portsmouth This Week, why don't you give an idea who is on your planning commission from Portsmouth, and who are they, and what do they do?
So on our board from the community, we have Sarah Churgan, who is our board chair. We have Keith Humphreys, who is also vice chair. Kate Wilson is our board secretary. And I'm blanking on our 4th board member.
I've got here.
Oh, Bob Andrews.
Andrews.
Who's been involved in economic development for quite some time here in Portsmouth.
And Linda. Ujifusa.
Linda Ujifusa is our council liaison, yes.
Yeah, I know her. I work with her at the senior center. The other thing I wanted to ask for the benefit of our viewers is how is AIPC funded? I mean, who pays for this operation?
That's a challenge. So each municipality gives us an annual stipend that gets approved and voted into the budget, so that's never a guarantee. And then the balance of our funding is from grants. So like many nonprofits, most nonprofits, we have to be creative, and the grant game is competitive. So,
do you get involved in writing grants?
Yes, in fact, you were asking me what a typical day looks like. When I leave here, I'll be going back to the office to finish a grant that's due today. So, yeah, we do. We wear many hats. We're a very lean organization.
Yeah, well, I did some grant writing when I was in the education field, and they can be rather complicated and very specific to targeting what it is that the grantor is looking for. So it's not an easy job and requires a lot of, I was going to say legwork, but probably now stuff on the computer and email and so forth. Let me ask you, again, Portsmouth this week, what's our stake in Portsmouth in this organization? I mean, what do we pay and what do we get? I guess the way I put it.
One of our board.
25 words or less. No, I'm just kidding.
One of our board members described us as an organization that punches above our weight. So we receive funding from each municipality of $18,000 a year. I mean, that's a matter of every municipality's public budget record. So from Portsmouth, we get our $18,000 in what Portsmouth gets back. We address those issues that flow across borders, water quality, transportation,
communication.
Right, communications technologies, and also one of the things that we're doing this year is reviewing and sort of updating the West Side Master Plan, which was a economic development initiative and study that came out in 2006. Doesn't even mention the word internet, and there's been quite a positive response across the communities on the island to look at that study again, because it's the most untapped area on Aquidneck Island today that could be developed and managed.
I notice in your mission statements and targets is this collaboration, which reflects the fact that individual communities can't afford to do some of these things alone.
Correct.
And so by partnering, they have a chance to cover. I noticed you got some projects in the future: Smart Island, Green Economy, BOD. What is a BOD?
Well, I'll back up. Let's go to the Smart Island. That's our Smart Island series of forums. So it gives us the opportunity to inform out to the municipalities and to have public participation. So we've had Smart Island series. Our most recent one was on the Coyote Smarts organization, and to talk about our ongoing populations of coyotes that we have here on Aquidneck Island, how best to manage them, what to do, what not to do. So that was a nice public information. We have legislative sessions. We've had series on our internet state, our island waters program, quite a bit.
We're going to get to that shortly. The land on the west side, what's striking here for me as a non-whatever, is how forward-looking all of these things. These will certainly be on the top of the priority list someday, and right now we're planning and we're taking actions that make us ready for that. And I guess we want to talk basically today about water, and that's not a simple thing. What kind of planning is AIPC doing reference the water situation.
Well, in this instance, we're not just planning. We're actually going to be constructing some green infrastructure to improve water quality in the watersheds on Aquidneck Island. So, all our drinking water supply we're the only island on the East Coast that has a solely surface water supply. So the city of Newport manages 9 reservoirs, and 2 of them are on the mainland in Tiverton, and 7 of them are right here on Aquidneck Island. You have the Portsmouth Water and Fire District that maintains the water supply and distribution network to the majority of Portsmouth, and then there's a section of Portsmouth, I understand, that's also served by Newport Water. And water does not respect municipal boundaries.
No.
We have a lot of
True.
what's referred to as impervious surface on
It's
the
what,
island.
please?
Impervious
Gotcha.
surfaces on the island.
Yeah.
So water doesn't filter through, it runs off. So stormwater, we have increasing severity of storms, increasing frequency of rainstorms, snowstorms. So we have a stormwater issue, significant stormwater issue on the island, and the stormwater will pick up various pollutants,
Yes.
detritus as it runs
Yeah.
off the roads,
Yeah.
and it will get
Yeah.
into our drinking water supply and also into our coastal waters, which drives a lot of quality of life for us here on Aquidneck Island and economic well-being.
Again, forgive my ignorance. I see signs on the road, careful, you're driving through a watershed, and I look and it's just a field, and I say, what are they talking about? And I guess I just never realized, as you mentioned, it spreads. And so that you're driving down a road that has trees and birds and bees, but under there is water moving toward your water supply. And Middletown had a critical problem down in right at the edge of the area near First Beach that was polluting the salt water. All that runoff was not going where it was supposed to, and so they spent a lot of money, as I recall, to fix that. Put up some kind of a gate. I don't understand it.
And the infrared, that was Newport. So I think when you look at impaired waters that we have, it's our drinking water supply and it's our coastal waters. And our coastal waters drive tourism is a significant economic engine here.
Yeah.
So a beach closure because of pollutants, one of our Island Waters Partners organizations, Clean Ocean Access, they do a lot of water quality testing on behalf of Department of Environmental Management all summer long and all year long. So it's critical to ensure that our watershed and the stormwater is managed well.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't aware of how fortunate we are in terms of having all that surface water here on the island and over in Nonquit Pond in the Tiverton area. And I guess like everything else, we get spoiled. There's no problem. We don't see a problem, so everything's fine. I used to work near the Attleboro area, and I would see their reservoir be high, and then when summer came, you could see rocks and bricks at the bottom of it. So we shouldn't take that for granted. And other places around the country, I guess water is a real scarcity too. So we're fortunate that way. What kinds of things will you be doing as part of the project? You're project manager for the water?
Sure. So I'll back up a little. The Island Waters Initiative is funded by the EPA. We received a nearly $1 million grant in 2016, and the Island Waters Partnership are the 3 municipalities on the island. We have our other nonprofit partners of the Aquidneck Land Trust, Clean Ocean Access, the Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District, and the state agencies DEM, RIDOT, the Department of Health.
How do you? This sounds like Octopus City.
Yeah, it can be challenging.
Yeah.
But it was originally a 3-year program of funding. So the first year was for the program group to get together and decide how to approach the project, which projects would we do, which ones could we afford, how do we phase them in. So we needed to we just received a 2-year extension on the grant funding, and we've identified some key projects that I'll call Phase 1. So the EPA monies are our initial funding, but we are also, in an ongoing way, always seeking additional funding. So you asked a question earlier about Portsmouth. For Portsmouth, we are probably going to spend upwards of maybe $400,000 or so taking some old detention ponds, and which are green infrastructure.
What are they called?
Detention ponds. So they're ponds that water drains into. It's detained there, and
That's
it
over
filters through.
Melville area?
Yeah, that's the St. Mary's Pond
Yes, yeah.
watershed.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing some work there, installing what's called a wet vegetated treatment system. So
You lost me already, Allison.
it's a type of engineered, structural, constructed component of green infrastructure that will focus stormwater runoff into the structure, and it has a series of bays where the water will filter and all the pollutants will filter out. Oh my God, I feel so obsolete.
This is fascinating story. What's involved in this water management thing? I guess I'll turn on the faucet with a different attitude from now on.
Well, a lot of respect to the Newport Utilities and their water division managing. They do a lot of the heavy lifting. So the Lawton Valley Reservoir, the water treatment plant there, we refer to that as gray infrastructure. They're also getting into the green infrastructure business, which is where we also bring some, our EPA funding, we were able to bring some additional funding onto the island that the municipalities would not have to expend.
That was a costly project. I remember reading about it in the paper, and I guess that some of the folks here and the staff of Portsmouth this week visited and went through it and showed us some of the machinery there. And as you speak about the facets of water processing and cleanliness, it's no wonder it costs so much money to do what it's expected to do, and not just
and required to do. So I mean, it's some serious hard engineering that goes on there on a regular basis, and it's required by the EPA, Standards of the Clean Water Act, the State Department of Environmental Management, and the Department of Health. So clean water matters to all of us.
Well, indeed, if it's not there, I think I told you earlier about having lived in another area where I think the only thing the water department did was pour a cup of chlorine in the pond and let us drink it. That's a day gone by. So a typical day for you, you must be on the phone a lot or on the computer a lot, just touching. I can't imagine, because I'm a simpleton, I can't imagine how complicated it is to get something done when you have to touch all these organizations. They all have a stake in it, and they're all watching you, right?
It can be a challenge.
You're being kind. A challenge. And as the years go by, you begin to be very sensitive to all the switches you have to push to make it go, and not leave anybody out or forget some little-known rule and so forth and so on. So the EPA gives quite a lot. How does the Land Trust get involved? Is that, well, I guess they have a stake in water tables and...
Well, sure. I mean, the conservation of open space, the preservation of open space. I mean, you have natural stormwater management. You want to conserve that open space for, natural systems and wildlife habitat. They would also be a very good guest to have on in the future, if you haven't already, to talk about what their specific mission is. But they're a very strong partner of ours on the Island Waters program.
Are there any of the farming communities involved in your work? I mean, farms require a lot of water, and so
yes.
Do they get involved in this planning?
Yes, we do. So the Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District, as a Island Waters partner, their purview is to support the agricultural interests in the state. And one of our so we have 3 particularly large projects for this phase of the program. We have the wet vegetated treatment systems that we're going to be implementing in Portsmouth, in Middletown. In Middletown, we are helping Hugendorn Nurseries, has an incredibly large project to manage their stormwater runoff that goes into the Maidford River and Gardner Pond and the drinking water supply.
Yes, I remember that.
That's a very complicated project. It's multiple federal interests and municipal parties and the property owners, because that's private property. And then in Newport, we are working on a project that's associated with Almy Pond, doing some pavement removal and restoring
Where is Almy Pond?
Almy Pond is off of, how familiar are you with Newport?
Well, there used to be an Almy family over in the Tiverton area. That's what struck me. But it's on the...
Do you know where the Spouting Rock Beach, Bailey's Beach is?
Oh, yes, right.
So it's the pond opposite.
Oh, okay. That's Almy Pond.
That's Almy Pond.
Clearly, I am a carpetbagger and didn't read my history books. So you find it challenging just keeping track of all of these things you have to, and as project manager, you are assigned to certain things, and you sort of oversee them and keep track of them, because...
Well, it's coordinating the various parties that need to be involved.
And that's just a single project?
That would be a single project.
And how many do you have?
Well, right now we have 3, and they're all quite large, and ideally they will be very impactful when all is said and done. And we're looking forward to it. So how does my day go? I might be working with somebody to come up with signage. So when one of the projects is completed this year, we'll want to put informational signage up for people to understand what the work was that was done. And then I'll bounce from that to maybe some transportation initiative. And then we might go from that to a phone call that relates to our broadband partners and what's happening there. So it can be pretty varied.
I have this
It's not boring.
Yeah, I was going to say, every day must be quite different than the day before, and you don't know what the following day is going to be like. But that's enlivening, isn't it? I mean, it's not like same old job, put the pickles in the jar and make sure the cover's tight, but you go in every day, and I suppose it's filled with surprises also, and unanticipated whatever. Do you get those calls that the water's leaking on my property, or I just noticed some bugs running around my yard, or whatever? Do you get any emergency calls like that?
I will get a lot of phone calls thinking that we're the Aquidneck Land Trust. I will get some phone calls thinking that we might be some department in the city of Newport. So it can be, we get a lot of inquiries from the media, some directly for us, and sometimes they just call us and ask us, we don't know who to talk to, who should we talk to about this matter. So it can be fairly entertaining.
Well, one of the problems with organizations such as the ones that you represent is getting the word out to the public. AIPC, is at the Providence College sports program for aspiring ladies, so you don't know.
Well, as I said earlier, we're a very lean organization. We're 2 full-time staffers, myself and our executive director, John Shea, and then we have a manager of communications and marketing, Claire Nelson, who handles all of our regular
press
newsletter,
releases and
press
so forth.
releases, social media, the website, all those good things. And then we also have a consulting planner who also works with us.
You have a planner
We have a
working
planner.
with a planning group?
How about that?
I love it. Well, it sounds like, I was curious, in 1985, I think you said this started. What was the, stimulus that created it? Was it, did people?
I do not have a window into what led to the legislation that allowed for regional planning organizations throughout the state.
You worked at the State House.
Right, and then I think in the late 80s, a planner can call me on this, but I think it was 1988 or so, the state required comprehensive plans of all the municipalities.
I remember that.
Right, so I
Yes.
think, over time, each municipality here on the island has very competent and complete planning staff that we work with.
Yeah. So it comes out of a need or some kind of new consciousness that we're going to pass legislation that will impact in communities. So what are you going to do about it? And so an organization like AIPC would flow out of that because it's necessary, Well, it's a fascinating area and fascinating work too. Work that, quite frankly, I wasn't familiar with, but it's, as you said, challenging. So, what project are you working on now? The Water Act, strictly.
That's our largest program of
Okay.
work right now, and then I would say probably we're helping to coordinate the transportation initiatives. I mean, unless you've been sleeping under a rock, there's some pretty extraordinary things going on with the Pell Bridge ramp realignment.
Yeah.
That's been 50 years in the making. So, in addition to that, probably seeing how far we can move the needle on the West Side Master Plan and take that from plan to reality. There's tremendous economic development opportunity there.
I have a feeling that you'll have plenty of work for a while.
We're not lacking in work, that is for sure.
The transportation thing, I think, is critical not only for the crowdedness that Newport is because of narrow streets, but for the flow over the bridges, 3 bridges, and the traffic is, you close one lane on any of the bridges and it's a nightmare. Well, Allison, I see our time has come to say goodbye. I will not sing like an aria or anything, but I appreciate you coming and talking to us about the AIPC. And for the rest of you, we'll be around again soon with another version of Portsmouth This Week. See you soon.